Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Astro-Bash Conference 2024 interviews. And today we have a treat. Camille Michelle Gray, you remember her from last year, all those beautiful interviews she did and introduced you to all the great speakers. Camille, you were a big part of making Astro-Bash happen last year. What was it like for you? What did you gain from it? And how come you decided to come back and speak this time?
Oh, well, to start with the last one first, I decided to come back because the environment was like incredibly magical. I would say even healing for me personally, given what I was going through at that time. And I thought it would be a perfect setting to do my first lecture or my first presentation. So this will be my first ever kind of talk at a conference of any kind. And so I thought the environment was going to be like really, really nurturing for folks who are in their like beginning stages, as well, of course, the seasoned folks coming in with their information as well. So it was a really, really great fit to see it from like behind the scenes last year and to know like, oh yeah, I want to be a part of this this year as well. Um, the other two parts of your question, what was it like? So it was actually quite scary for me. And I know you've probably been working with Ralph behind the scenes, but like his vision is so strong and it's so palpable in the way that he communicates it. And it felt like such an important thing to like translate that into some kind of like material experience. So I remember feeling a lot of pressure and, to bring astrology into it. Like Jupiter was going through my 11th house. And so it was like, you need to say yes to this big thing because it can put you in front of other astrologers. It can flesh out a new skill set for you that might be useful at some point. And it was just like a treat, also just being able to work with a whole bunch of astrologers behind the scenes every week, right, to try to get this thing off the ground and then to see it actually happen. So yeah, the beginning parts, I have a Capricorn stellium. I was like, oh, am I going to be able to do this? Am I capable? But it ended up just being really, really magical to see it actually like happen in the material world.
So funny. Even Capricorn stelliums can have self-doubt, people. That
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think you guys did such a beautiful job. And every single person who I've talked to who was there last year has told me how beautiful the community was. What a great experience you and Ralph and Suzanne and the entire team put together. So I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to being there in person this year too.
Me
So,
too.
Camille, what are you going to talk about this time?
So I feel like it's fair to say like this idea actually grew out of the conference last year. So to preface, Vernon Robinson last year gave a presentation about the astrology of the first slave ship that came to Southampton, Virginia in the 1600s. And in that presentation, he made a kind of aside to the fact that Black folk, the kind of diaspora of Black folk, are Neptunian. And that kind of like stuck in my craw. And there was like a question and answer session. I was like, oh, what do you mean by this? And some other folks in the crowd were giving their ideas. And from there on, I was like, I have to do more research into this because one of my passion points in astrology is bringing people of color or bringing communities maybe that are underserved into this pantheon of like research and work that astrology is a part of. And so I remember coming home from that conference and like being really, really geared up and ready to go about researching these connections between Neptunian archetypes and the many faces of Neptune and how that does kind of map on quite perfectly to Black culture, Black historical events, or the way that Black people are treated, at least in America. So my talk is called Neptune and the Black Condition, although I may tweak that a little bit later. And it's basically just a look at the very, very profound Neptunian archetypes that are part of the culture, part of our history, as well as a look at some of the behemoths, like juggernauts of Black history and Black culture, and examining how they have really strong Neptunes as well, and how that kind of like plays into them being the culture carriers in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's what my talk is generally going to be about. It grew from the last Astro-Bash, and so it feels very full circle for it to now be presented at the second one.
That is such an interesting topic, Michelle.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm curious about, I mean, did you bring in the Black Lives Matter movement and Neptune's ingress into, I mean, I don't remember the exact dates of when that happens, but Neptune ingresses into Pisces. And when Saturn and Neptune are together in Pisces, I've done talks on this. So I remember this,
Yeah.
but it's like there is a lot of social revolution at that
Oh
time.
God, that's perfect. Yeah, I hadn't mapped those two things onto one another, but maybe it's something I'll shout out in the talk as you of the source, as the source.
Well, no, I'm asking you to check that because I don't
Okay.
actually know if the Black Lives Matter. I know it was happening during the Saturn Neptune. Actually, Neptune entered Pisces 2011, 2012. Like it
Yeah.
kind of went back and forth, and then 2011, 2012, and so many big things happened. But I know Black Lives Matter and Me Too were happening very close to that moment
Beautiful.
in time. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, I mean, maybe I don't know when the date would be for it, or even when like the critical mass happened, but I'd be very curious to see if in the contemporary moment.
Yeah. That's a great thing to look up. Yeah, and I think maybe Trayvon Martin had a lot to do with springing that into the popularity. Yeah, so even looking at his chart, which I did, but I didn't connect it to Black Lives Matter and Neptune and Pisces. So that's a really beautiful, juicy tangent to unravel.
Yeah. I would love to hear about it because I'm kind of obsessed with the Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces moment.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I got to do a talk on it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating.
Isn't it? I
Yeah.
love it when astrology just keeps working. Like it keeps working. Yeah, it lines up.
Yeah. I'm really excited about your talk. I'm really,
Thank
really
you.
curious because there's such a Neptune's also so healing, and you talked
Mm,
about how it was healing for you. And then to come here with this talk that can bring a sense of self reflection to a
totally.
community of people, like what a beautiful gift to
Yeah,
astrology and to humanity,
I
because
think so too. Yeah.
yeah, I'm delighted and excited. So,
Thank you.
Camille, you have this unique thing that you're doing in the world, which is combining both evolutionary, which is pretty modern, with Hellenistic, which is pretty ancient. Can you talk a
Yes.
little bit about your intersectionality?
Yeah, so I remember when I first started in the astrology world, the astrology podcast was like a main source of a lot of my learning, and I think it is for a lot of newbies and experts alike. And so I ended up just being like steeped in those kind of traditional concepts from like an early kind of genesis point in my journey as an astrologer. But then I remember reading The Inner Sky by Stephen Forrest, and I just had this like moment of like I didn't know that the signs could be talked about like this. It sounds so hyperbolic, but it felt like poetry to me. And I have like a lot of experience as a songwriter and a singer. So I love that kind of bridging of Stephen Forrest's like more lyrical take on the signs and like what they can do with the kind of fundamentals and the basics and the techniques of traditional astrology, which I continue to see work over and over again. So it ended up just being like a natural combination. Like I didn't think about combining them. I was just like, I really love the soulful storytelling of Stephen Forrest and the evolutionary astrology school, but I actually also really, really love the precision of Hellenistic astrology and the Chris Brennan side of things. So that just ended up being what I did. Like I ended up just combining the two of those. It's like my analytical brain and my more Neptunian lyrical brain wanted to merge them both into a thing. And so the readings that I give and my perspectives, I think, do just come from both of those schools of thought. And I think it works. And I know you do something similar, so you can probably attest to the fact that I think it works.
Yeah, I agree. I like the granular. I studied with, I did some Hellenistic with Adam Ellenboss's Nightlight
Yeah,
Astrology, and then I did School for Traditional Astrology with Deb Holding and got certified in Horary. And I find the granularity of the traditional techniques really helpful, but I want to answer questions that evolutionary astrology asks. Like
beautiful.
why are we here? And I feel
Yeah,
like you're kind of answering that question even in your talk, like what is really going on with this entire group of people. It's like a almost like a sub branch of astrology to look at the historical views and then to
yeah,
combine both of those things in it.
yeah.
Beautiful.
I really like to say that Hellenistic astrology answers the question of like what is going on? And then evolutionary astrology answers the question of like why? Like, well,
Mhm.
now what am I supposed to do with this? So that I think that's why it made such like a natural sense to combine those two.
Yeah. I agree. I love that. I'm so on board with that. I think there's going to be a lot of us as a revival of traditional astrology happens along with, and then we hold all that we have and without
Absolutely.
affecting any part of it. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more about that.
Thank you.
Can you share an unexpected insight or revelation you've had through your work in astrology that changed your perspective or had a lasting impact on you as you combined both of these things, maybe?
Yeah, I think maybe, and this is maybe a vague answer, but I think it speaks to both. I'm in awe of like the timing of astrology and the timing of like things that happen in my life. So often clients will come to me and often I'm just kind of like navel gazing about my own life and it feels like everything is right on time. And that's like a realization that I've come away with time and time again. It's how people are asking questions at the exact moment the planets are like trying to answer those questions, or how I may be going through like a dark night of the soul at the exact time that Saturn, right, is doing something to my moon, and this is where I'm supposed to be. So that has been my greatest, I guess, takeaway from astrology as a whole. But it also just helps me to know that everything's kind of time constrained, right? So it's easy to be maybe in a place of sadness and be like, this is forever, at least for me, because I have Moon Pluto. But when you look at the transits and you look at, essentially like from a Stephen Forrest point of view, what's the best of what you can get out of this? What's the highest potential? It allows you to use that time constructively and maybe be softer with yourself and more compassionate with yourself and with others because they're going through stuff too. Yeah, and I feel like it just makes you such an active participant and witness of your own life to be able to know that things are happening on time all the time. And therefore, what are you going to do with the time that it's happening? So I think that's been my biggest takeaway. I know that's a little bit of like an existential answer.
I love existential answers. I am very philosophically oriented, on time and right on time. Love that.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have had multiple mentors, some from books and videos, some from in person. You've been on podcasts. What is your experience of mentorship and what has that brought into your life?
Wow. It's been invaluable because I think one of the things that mentorship does is mentors see your potential, I think, before you do. And so to have someone who's like invested in your future or someone who's invested in what you have to say, it creates this engine within you, like, oh, okay, maybe I'm on the right path, or maybe I do have a distinct point of view. But then it also makes you want to like exploit all resources possible so you can get better, so that you can, I don't know, be like a shining example for your mentor. And I think that this practice would die, I think, without mentors. Even like when you look back traditionally, there were so many understudies and apprenticeships. So there's just so much invaluable knowledge that is passed down from person to person, that I think keeps this practice alive and keeps it like really juicy from a human perspective rather than it always just being like a textbook kind of journey, which I was on for a lot of the time. So there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, there's something about like the human element of mentorship. Like I see and use something and I would like to cultivate it, that is mutually enriching for the mentee and the mentor. So I would be nowhere without my mentors.
Amen. Me too. I Yeah, it
Yeah.
really orients you, and to have
Yes.
the in person. We've talked a bunch about transmission in a lot of these interviews and just being in person with people. What was your experience being in person with these wonderful astrologers, Kay and Stephen and
Yeah.
Camille and so many others last year as you were having meals and sharing charts and
God, yeah, it was so beautiful. Part of me did feel like intimidated, and I think there's a function to that, to be around people who are at a level that you would want to be at. It kind of inspires you. But then the second and the most prominent thing I took away was like, I'm in an industry of brilliance, just like brilliance. And I remember when Kay was speaking and Cameron, and especially when Stephen Forrest was speaking, and I'm so glad he has like a full day this time.
yes, me too.
Uh, the hush that went over the crowd and like the eager faces and like the scribbling of notes. It's both being in the presence of information that you want to capture, but also just being in the presence of like, I don't know, like a very powerful astrologer, I guess, that just it feels magical. It's almost hard to articulate in that way. But then you get to like squeeze like personal time from them at the meals or like before and after the lectures. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but yeah, that transmission is very, very palpable and very, very real. And that's, I think, like most of what made it such a magical experience.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
actually excited not just to see Stephen, but you and every other
thank you.
speaker there too. I mean,
Me
there's just
too.
such a warmth and an inclusiveness to everybody I've spoken to so far. Everybody's looking forward to sitting at all the different tables, not segregating speakers and attendees, and everybody just cohabiting in the same resort area and mingling at meals. I know that I've loved that from the apprenticeship programs, and this is going to be like a notch further because now we get to speak while our mentor is present, and what
Yeah.
they talk about intimidating, but also what a great honor in some ways to be able to show someone that you've worked with that, wow, you lit my flame and look, I'm
Yeah,
carrying it forward because it's not just us, right? Like we're bringing the craft further and every little
absolutely.
voice matters. And whether you're just studying or you're speaking or you're learning and you're somewhere in between, everybody's needed.
And
Yeah.
it's such a gift. Yeah, and thanks for saying that because I feel like there's a lot, and maybe it's just me projecting. I'm like, do I have anything new to say? And then people will always be like, well, it's coming from the vessel of you, and there's no other you. So it's just invaluable, right? And speaking back to the mentorship, like lighting that flame, it's not that they're parroting you, but they're just taking it that much further. And I think
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing to witness. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we all stand, I mean, Stephen Forrest too has mentors,
Yeah.
and the mentors before him, and Vedius Valens probably had mentors,
Yeah.
he didn't invent astrology, right?
Yeah, we're all standing on the shoulders of greats. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of standing on the shoulders of greats, Camille, you've heard
Mm.
me probably ask in other interviews, if you could have a conversation with any astrologer, who would it be and what would you talk to them about?
Oh man, I have seen you ask this and I did not formulate an answer.
That's okay. You can come up with one now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. I mean, it feels so cheesy to say, but I think the person I would want to talk to the most is Stephen Forrest, just because he does have such a wealth of information. And the question I would ask, was that the second part of it? Like what I would
Sure.
say?
Yeah.
Um, gosh. Well, I guess, I would ask him not about myself. I would ask what has been the lesson or the gift that your, expertise in this field has given you and your life. Because I think Stephen Forrest is really good at helping students and enthusiasts like anticipate for their own lives or for the collective. But I really want to hear how it works for his personal life, maybe in like, certain instances, how it has shown up for him and getting that more personal lens from his point of view, I guess is what I would ask.
I love it. Well, he's going to be there. So
Yes.
you have the perfect opportunity. And it's a really small group. That's what I love about Astro-Bash. It's not like a 400 or 500 people conference. It's so much more
Yeah.
intimate. I, so I
Yeah.
hope that when I talk to you at Astro-Bash, you'll be like, oh yeah, I talked to him about that. And he told me,
Yeah. And I just pass it along. I would love that. Let's speak it
yeah,
into existence. Yeah.
amen, sister, you and me. And so, Camille, a couple more fun questions. What is your
Yeah.
favorite aspect in your chart?
Oh, I think my most favorite aspect in my chart is I have a Mercury-Uranus conjunction. And so I
Mm.
think that makes me interested in like astrology or like constantly asking questions, why? And it just makes life interesting. I guess because I am a Gemini rising, so that is kind of my ascendant lord. It's never boring. I'm always questioning things, trying to figure out why. I think it does impart like a kind of tolerance to other people's ideas and just like humanity in general, which I also think makes life more rich and more dynamic. Yeah, so I was musing on that aspect of mine yesterday from the anxiety point of view, but now from the love point of view, I think it just makes me such an ardent student of life, and I'm always fascinated by what I receive every single day is like a learning experience.
Yeah, that Neptune talk you're doing is
Yeah.
such an indication of that exact aspect.
Yeah, just like inventing things.
Yes, follow your curiosity and invent something unthought of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Beautiful. And my last question to you, Camille, actually, not my last question.
Okay.
First, let me ask you, how can people find you if they want to know more about you? Of course, they come to Astro-Bash and get to talk to you there, but
Yes,
where else?
yes. That's the first step. Come to Astro-Bash. But I'm on the internet. I mostly do a lot of my work through Instagram, through like visual infographics. And so they can find me at Millie Michelle, MILLYMICHELLE. And then if they're interested in more of my long form, like essay work or in getting a consultation, they can go to CamilleMichelleGray.com.
Wonderful. And Michelle, I'd like to end with, if your moon took over the world, what would be the first thing it would change?
Oh
Or
my God. So my moon is in Taurus. And if my moon took over the world, the first thing it would change is everyone gets to have access to homes and food. Everyone gets to be comfortable. That's so important to me. And it's so important, I think, just worldwide, just those basic bread and butter tourist necessities. Everyone's sheltered, everyone has food, everyone has what they need to get by. That's the first thing.
beautiful. What a great note to end it. Everybody has food, everybody's nourished and sheltered
Yes,
and has what they
yes, yes,
need.
yes.
Thank you to you, Camille, and to your beautiful
Thanks.
moon for that wish that we also get to breathe into the world. And I so look forward to seeing you very, very soon at
Thank you. You
Astro-Bash.
too. Thank you. This was great.